witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. It's a very neutral and interesting piece.
Blake Lively is in total distress after a daring Hollywood journalist unleashed a shocking revelation that laid her bare like never before.
She can't prepare for what she doesn't know they have, and again, they have
What appeared to be just a simple cover illustration turned out to be a ruthless takedown disguised in glossy print. She's faced backlash before, no doubt, but this one ventures into career-ending territory.
Now the Hollywood Reporter has seemingly outed the two actresses' names. They're pretty much being bullied to respond.
It all unfolded on the cover of the Hollywood Reporter on February 22nd, a masterpiece that single-handedly tore apart Blake Lively's entire facade. The image was pure gold, depicting her firing a slingshot at Justin Baldoni, as if we've somehow reverted to medieval times where legal battles are resolved with cartoonish weaponry.
As TMZ is now reporting, of course witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. Now this smells like Blake's PR team trying to spin why they're not coming forward.
If the goal was to make her look utterly ridiculous, consider it a success. Rather than standing her ground like an adult, Blake is now forever captured in a scene that makes her look completely absurd.
Even if Justin was too huggy or whatever the heck, or said she was sexy, none of this warrants this. And you still have to atone for what you did.
Blake's team wasted no time throwing a tantrum, labeling the cover as sexist, because naturally everything becomes sexist when you're on the losing side. Their complaint argued that the illustration reinforced negative stereotypes about outspoken women. But let's be honest, if a drawing is your biggest fight, maybe your case isn't as solid as you'd like to believe.
Guys, she goes in and there's a lot of Twitter complaints, some of which, 2 or 3 of them are horrid and shouldn't be there, but some of them are spot on.
Rather than presenting actual evidence, they jumped straight to the classic outrage playbook, hoping the internet would rally behind them. Instead, people are now laughing at the irony. Someone who constantly champions strong, independent women falling apart over a magazine cover.
A lot of comments that she puts in here that you're just like, why would you want to take over someone's movie? The outfits in this end are so out of touch. No, we don't want to watch bullies like Blake.
And the best part? The article didn't stop at the amusing artwork. It went much deeper. It shed light on Justin Baldoni's Baha'i faith, which, in the grand scheme of things, suggested that this whole fiasco wasn't a straightforward case of harassment at all. Instead, it painted a picture of a cultural misunderstanding that had been blown entirely out of proportion.
I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained. Yikes. Big yikes.
Her team's response was textbook deflection. Rather than offering concrete proof to support her claims, they went into full attack mode against the Hollywood Reporter, as if challenging Blake's narrative was some sort of offense. No facts, no new evidence, just pure, unfiltered outrage.
There's not a shred of evidence to support it. Really?
They assumed the public would blindly rally behind her, but all they did was expose just how weak her argument truly was. If ever there was a time to step back and reassess the strategy, this was it. Instead, she doubled down, digging herself into an even deeper hole.
It was just because of the way he is culturally with his religion. I want to go through some of these pieces because, hear me out, here it is. So, from the outset, the feud's been framed as the newest chapter in Hollywood's ongoing fight for gender equality.
By bringing Baldoni's religious background into the mix, the report shifted the conversation in a way that completely unraveled Blake's narrative. Rather than allowing people to assume the worst about Baldoni, it forced them to consider the possibility that his actions weren't malicious at all, just misinterpreted through Hollywood's hypersensitive lens.
Even before It Ends With Us, Baldoni wasn't afraid to interject elements of his religion on the set. He did talk about his religion a lot, says a source, on 5 Feet Apart. This had shades of Scientology, but with less of the prominence and people hovering at the times. I think that's being mean. Nothing I've done makes it anywhere near the criminal accusations and things that Scientology does.
And instead of even acknowledging this as a valid perspective, Blake did what she does best. Played the victim, ignored the nuance, and stuck to the script. The problem now? The audience isn't buying it anymore. Every detail of this scandal only reinforces how painfully unserious Blake Lively has become. Her team's constant outbursts, baseless accusations, and desperate attempts to control the narrative reek of damage control on overdrive. But the harder they push, the worse it gets.
Team Blake Lively may think they have the upper hand. Sources say she has no idea what's coming regarding her battle with Justin Baldoni.
Instead of proving she's worthy of the respect she demands, Blake is only revealing herself as someone who simply can't handle reality. And the irony? The more she tries to dodge the scrutiny, the more she becomes the main event.
Yeah, it's a little bit more pro-Blake than I think the reality is, but it is more neutral than most Hollywood trade pieces I've seen, and it brings in something much more interesting, which is this leap of...
The public once had blind faith in Blake Lively, but that loyalty vanished the moment glaring inconsistencies began surfacing in her story. Rather than standing firm, she conveniently omitted key text messages from her amended lawsuit. Messages that, if left untouched, would have completely dismantled her narrative.
Look, Team Justin has not given up, and they are being incredibly aggressive because Brian Friedman is doing his job. This is what he does. It's a winning strategy, and he pretty much can't lose at this point, it seems, because Blake's been unable to provide anything realistic.
This wasn't just an innocent revision. It was a calculated move to conceal the cracks in her allegations, a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion. But instead of strengthening her case, this strategic omission only raised red flags, making it glaringly obvious that the truth wasn't exactly on her side.
They're showing a little ankle, but not the whole leg, if you know what I mean. I'm sure she wouldn't approve of that reference, too sexist.
Media outlets wasted no time tearing her claims apart like vultures feasting on a carcass. With each new headline, her credibility took another hit, exposing her accusations as nothing more than a fragile web of selective storytelling.
She thinks she knows what they have, everything that's on the website, so she can prepare for that, but she can't prepare for what she doesn't know they have, and again, they have a...
The more she tried to control the narrative, the more the media exposed her legal strategy as fragile as a house of cards in a hurricane. At this point, it's less of a case and more of a theatrical performance, with Blake desperately trying to keep the spotlight anywhere but on the facts.
Justin kept everything. Now, why? Why would he have kept everything? That's a good question. Well, did you think he did something wrong? Or could the, interactions on set have been so uncomfortable for some, it was just because of the way he is culturally with his religion?
Legal analysts have been observing this circus unfold, and let's just say, they're not impressed. Instead of presenting a solid, evidence-backed case, Blake keeps changing her approach like a magician pulling new tricks out of a hat. Every sudden pivot feels less like a carefully planned strategy and more like a desperate attempt to cover up her own missteps.
There's another possibility, one that has less to do with gender than it does with simple cultural misunderstandings. What if much of it, the alleged inappropriate hugging, which Blake mentioned in her new amended suit, the pre-filming praying, could be explained as a clash between a very specific, faith-driven community with its unique mores and a much more modern, post-Me Too one with its own set of beliefs and commandments.
The constant legal flip-flopping only reinforces that she's out of her depth, relying on smoke and mirrors instead of solid facts. If her credibility wasn't already hanging by a thread, her erratic legal tactics are practically slicing that thread with a chainsaw.
I've never worked with a male director who was so worried about everyone's emotional and mental well-being. There was an openness and emotionality to his style that was more typical of a woman, and it probably wouldn't be an issue if it was a female director.
Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's team has been systematically tearing down every accusation with cold, hard facts. No speculation, no vague claims, just concrete evidence that directly contradicts Blake's version of events. This isn't a battle of opinions anymore. It's a full-blown reality check. And as Baldoni's receipts keep piling up, Blake's case is looking less like a pursuit of justice and more like a desperate attempt to control the narrative.
But Justin genuinely believes that if we do this, we'll work better as a group. There's a little bit of an arrogance to it. It's like he doesn't want to acknowledge the world we live in, which is that most people don't want to do this kumbaya.
And then there's social media, where the tables have turned so fast Blake must have whiplash. What began as unwavering support has morphed into relentless backlash. Memes, sarcastic commentary, and ruthless critiques have transformed her legal drama into one massive internet punchline.
Now, Blake, allegedly, according to these sources, and there's a lot of stuff in here, whole piece is worth a read. Now, Blake has shared with friends, allegedly, that she considers this a fight that's bigger than her.
People aren't just questioning her claims anymore. They're outright mocking her every move. Instead of rallying behind her, the online community is tearing her narrative apart, making it clear that her attempt to control the conversation has completely backfired. To make matters worse, Blake's legal team pulled a last-minute stunt, filing an amended complaint just before the deadline, a move that reeks of pure desperation.
Likely to be remembered as the spark that ignited the next chapter of the Me Too movement. On the other side is a billionaire producer, a novice filmmaker, director, and a small Baha'i, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Baha'i employees who believe they are simply living up to the moral code of their faith.
Instead of bringing any clarity, they padded the lawsuit with even more vague defamation claims, doubling down on casting Baldoni as the villain in this already over-the-top drama. In a flimsy attempt to strengthen her case, they threw in claims that other women on set felt uncomfortable. Of course, without providing any real details or specifics. At this point, the lawsuit is starting to feel like one long, exaggerated monologue with zero substance.
For Justin Baldoni was just Michael Scott in The Office, where he's just saying inappropriate things, but not with any ill will. But Blake Lively, much more different culturally, more about the power and thinking that this is about the feminist Me Too movement. And how dare you do this?
Every new twist in this circus of incompetence only solidifies Blake Lively's reputation as a manipulative actress who thrives on deception. The endless legal maneuvers, the blatant lack of transparency, the constant attempts to rewrite reality, it all points to one thing. This was never about justice. It was always about control. But no matter how hard she tries to twist the story in her favor, the cracks in her performance are simply too big to ignore.
She doesn't provide any text. She doesn't tell us who these people are. Just says they don't want to get involved right now, given all the toxic virality out there, and that they will testify if necessary and be part of disclosures, etc., coming up, depositions, what have you.
The fact that these texts were deleted speaks volumes about the sheer fragility of her narrative. Some of the removed messages outright suggest that her team exaggerated their claims far beyond what the facts could support. Rather than presenting a solid, coherent case, Blake chose to sanitize her own records in a desperate bid to control a story that is rapidly falling apart. These deleted messages, already backed with context by Baldoni's team, leave no doubt that her entire narrative is built on shaky ground. This omission isn't just a minor oversight. It's a glaring red flag that completely undermines the foundation of her allegations.
First thing I noticed is, as I compared it to the last one, a lot of texts were actually removed. This is the new document, as I made a note here, but as you'll notice here, this is the original complaint. As you can see, that first text is still there, but she removed, they removed quite a few texts.
Legal experts were quick to point out that the removal of such evidence wasn't an innocent mistake. It was a calculated move designed to hide the weaknesses in her case. They argue that the absence of these texts only fuels speculation that Blake's claims are far weaker than initially presented. The very act of deleting critical evidence suggests a deep-seated insecurity about the credibility of her allegations.
Realize how lucky he is right now. We need to press on him how effing lucky. The whispering in the ear, the connotations, the JFC, other members feeling uncomfortable watching it. I mean, there's just so much.
It's as if she knows that when confronted with the truth, her story would crumble under the weight of its own inconsistencies and outright fabrications. This maneuver, in all its clumsy audacity, only further damages her reputation, reinforcing the growing perception that she's nothing more than a desperate actress grasping at straws.
Justin revealed the context of these texts because they did look more nefarious, but the context, if you read the full exchange, shows that Justin's publicists are saying it doesn't even matter if it's not true.
While Blake was busy erasing inconvenient truths, Justin Baldoni's defense launched a relentless counterattack. His team aggressively dismantled each of her baseless allegations, leaving no stone unturned. With a formidable legal strategy, Baldoni's camp systematically provided documented evidence that directly contradicted her claims. His lawyer, Brian Fredman, renowned for his aggressive litigation style, has been instrumental in tearing apart the flimsy arguments presented by Blake's team.
Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece. That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best. Remember the removing emojis, the fact that this is all out of context? Well, they addressed that in a footnote that I found incredibly interesting.
It's a clear display of legal prowess, as Fredman and his team argue that Baldoni's actions were misinterpreted rather than inappropriate. Backing up their claims, they have presented an extensive array of texts, calls, and emails, all reinforcing Baldoni's version of events and systematically dismantling Blake's allegations.
Jones' work produced the communications to Miss Lively in a connection with a lawful subpoena, and the documents included within this complaint are attached in the format in which they were produced, subject to the...
Sources close to the case reveal that Baldoni holds extensive evidence, including crucial communications proving that his conduct was entirely professional. Every piece of evidence serves as a testament to the fact that his actions were merely misunderstood by an overzealous team eager to fabricate a scandal. While Blake desperately tries to frame the situation as a so-called cultural clash, her narrative crumbles under the weight of hard, incontrovertible evidence.
Lively did not want to film additional takes of the scene, but continue to participate to be a team player and support the production in real time, while simultaneously expressing and holding physical. It's insane!
Baldoni's camp has mounted a robust defense, clearly demonstrating that his actions were misinterpreted rather than malicious. Their legal strategy centers on proving defamation and reputational damage, effectively turning the tables by exposing the broader agenda behind Blake's claims.
Lively has understood the produced documents, the text messages that were in her original complaint and are in this one. She has understood the produced documents and communications to have been lawfully obtained. That's how she understood it. They were lawfully obtained, maintained, and produced by Jones.
Her inability to accept different cultural expressions is as transparent as it is hypocritical. While Baldoni's warm demeanor, characterized by his habit of offering hugs and openly expressing emotions, is simply his way of connecting with people, Blake perceives such behavior as an affront to her warped sense of decorum. Some colleagues have even described his actions as caring and supportive, yet others, blinded by their own rigid expectations, chose to interpret them as discomforting.
Images such as emojis, when available in a preserved screenshot, for example, were attached as produced. So the way I take this is, well, if those texts weren't real or they were edited, it wasn't our fault, they were Jones' work. But girl, they are your fault.
Rather than considering the possibility that these differences are perfectly normal in a diverse environment, Blake seizes on the discomfort to falsely allege misconduct. The very notion that a cultural misunderstanding could justify her outrage only highlights the lack of substance in her argument.
What you're calling retaliation is them defending themselves against your out of context, picked and choose text messages that may have been unlawfully gotten.
To make matters worse, reports suggest that Blake Lively maintained an iron grip over the production, orchestrating a power struggle that left little room for genuine creative collaboration. Rather than being a unifying force, she allegedly imposed multiple arbitrary demands on the script and filming process. Wielding her star power like a weapon, she forced decisions to align with her vision, micromanaging every detail as if the entire project existed solely for her benefit.
I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained.
It is a textbook display of authoritarian behavior, where control is prioritized over actual productivity. The amended complaint, which she later attempted to downplay, serves as nothing more than a desperate effort to sanitize her record, even as mounting evidence of her domineering tactics becomes impossible to ignore.
I want to go through two sections where she attempts to address the taking over of the film, which is very telling. None of the requested protections were tied in any ways to Miss Lively's creative input in the film and were made months before discussions regarding the cut of the film.
Her legal team insists that her actions were meant to foster a safe work environment, yet the reality suggests otherwise. Every directive she imposed appeared to be a calculated effort to assert dominance rather than genuine concern. Baldoni's team dismantles this claim by revealing how these so-called safety measures were nothing more than a thinly veiled excuse for her obsessive need to control every facet of the production.
At that time and moment, with the completion of the film uncertain, Miss Lively did not request, nor did she receive, any creative rights, editing rights, credits, or any other role on the film beyond her roles as an actress and executive producer.
The final version of the film unmistakably bears the imprint of her interference, a collection of forced changes that reflect her overbearing presence rather than any sincere concern for the crew's well-being. Instead of fostering a creative and respectful atmosphere, she transformed the set into her personal dictatorship, a misguided effort to reshape the narrative in her favor.
That she did all this as some sort of Byzantine plot to take control of the movie at some future point, which she did not do in any event, is absurd.
The stark contrast between Baldoni's respectful, culturally enriched approach and Blake's aggressive, dictatorial behavior is undeniable. His actions, characterized by authentic displays of emotion and cultural expression, were interpreted by some as merely unconventional.
This Maximum Effort could have been taken over, which it was. Maximum Effort, her husband's production company, literally took over the marketing, as Justin's proven, which she does not admit in this.
Meanwhile, Blake's relentless control and arbitrary demands reveal a manipulative force determined to impose her own vision, regardless of merit. Her constant need to micromanage every detail rather than working cooperatively only highlights the pettiness of her ambitions. It is as if she believes her star power entitles her to override any collaborative process, even if it means alienating everyone around.
Had leverage and I didn't use it. I merely set up this whole precedent, so it could help the crew. Yeah, right. As if that also wouldn't establish a control pattern that you then used and made everyone afraid of you.
In a desperate bid to shift blame from her own authoritarianism, Blake clings to the notion of a cultural clash as a shield against criticism. She pretends that Baldoni's behavior, rooted in his Baha'i faith and expressed through simple acts of warmth, is being unfairly misconstrued as harassment. This shallow narrative is nothing but a feeble attempt to mask her own aggressive tactics. Rather than admitting that her overbearing control on set was the real issue, she deflects by claiming that cultural differences are to blame, a transparent ruse to cover up her self-serving agenda.
It brings in something much more interesting, which is this leap of faith. Did the director's Baha'i religion play what role did it play on set? And could all of this just gone wrong because of one big cultural misunderstanding?
Blake Lively's portrayal of the slow dance scene is nothing but a desperate attempt to rewrite history. She accused Justin Baldoni of adding unapproved intimate gestures during filming, leaning in, kissing her forehead, and caressing her without her consent. However, video evidence clearly contradicts her account, showing her actively engaging in the scene and even initiating some of the actions she now claims were forced.
Meanwhile, you're holding everything over his head as if he does anything, he's screwed. I mean, this is, it's shocking, but it gets worse. It gets worse. One incident, they're filming the slow dance. As you recall, you can pause and watch this, read this again.
Baldoni's team maintains that the scene was always meant to be intimate, a genuine portrayal of mutual attraction rather than a case of unwanted advances. Adding fuel to the fire, The Hollywood Reporter paraded an expert who conveniently was not even present on set, casting further doubt on Blake's distorted narrative. Critics argue that her attempt to rewrite history is simply an effort to strengthen her case with fabricated details, selective editing, and embarrassingly distorted facts.
What she said in her original complaint about the dance sequence, oh my God, wait till you see how she changes it now due to the filming being released. It's unbelievable how she attempts to frame that.
Adding further complexity to this debacle, reports suggest that Jenny Slate has allegedly filed an HR complaint against Baldoni. Although the exact details of her grievance remain shrouded in silence, insiders speculate that her complaint might align with Lively's claims of on-set discomfort. Some argue that her allegations support the narrative of a hostile working environment, while others contend that her complaint is entirely unrelated to the main legal battle. If her complaint proves to be connected, it could add significant weight to an already fragile case built on shaky foundations.
She tries to play it here, and you can pause and read it yourself. Mr. Baldoni did not provide notice or seek consent for any intimacy in advance. He chose to spontaneously improvise the scene while the cameras were rolling.
Yet Jenny Slate's persistent silence only amplifies the ambiguity, leaving everyone questioning the true extent of the discomfort on set. Her potential testimony, if it ever surfaces, could be pivotal in exposing the reality behind Lively's exaggerated claims, further undermining the credibility of her entire narrative. This unresolved mystery casts a shadow over the legitimacy of her entire legal strategy.
None of this took place while he was in character as Ryle, because both the intimacy and dialogue departed from what had been agreed to in the script, which was slow dancing in their own world, drinking, watching. What she's failing to mention is it's a big part in the book. They don't kiss right away.
The controversy deepens as Blake Lively frames this entire debacle as a feminist battle against workplace misconduct. She clings to the Me Too movement as a shield to deflect attention from her own inconsistencies, painting herself as a victim of a systemic problem. In stark contrast, Baldoni's team argues that his actions were grossly misinterpreted rather than inherently predatory, reflecting a natural expression of his cultural and emotional openness.
It's the tease, it's the buildup, and he's not kissing her. So it's very clear from the outset what that scene was meant to be. Them locked in the trance, going as far as they could go, and this idea that she couldn't speak out and say, no, I don't want. So, because she did multiple intimacies with scenes with him later.
This clash has reignited fierce debates about gender and power dynamics in Hollywood, with some accusing Lively of exploiting a noble cause for personal gain. Critics warn that her false accusations risk undermining real victims of harassment and could set a perilous precedent for future workplace disputes. The entire narrative is a tangled mess, that serves only to obscure the truth and distort genuine discourse on consent and respect, further confounding public perception.
You're the one who constantly is trying to take control and direct. There's footage of her forcing herself on Justin to make out with him, and I doubt there were intimacy coordinator scenes on the street in those scenes either.
Blake's attempt to use the slow dance scene as evidence of impropriety is a transparent maneuver meant to distract from her own shortcomings. By accusing Baldoni of unapproved intimate gestures, she not only distorts what was a consensual, scripted moment, but also attempts to cast herself as a victim of misconduct. The fact that video evidence shows her engaging willingly in the scene completely undermines her claim of non-consent.
Kissing was scripted in advance does not justify Mr. Baldoni's improvisations or attempts to add graphic scenes into the film. She then later goes in and explains, it's ridiculous. The video footage shows Miss Lively trapped. She was trapped.
Blake Lively's attempt to use the slow dance scene as proof of misconduct is nothing more than a weak distraction from her own flaws. She accuses Baldoni of adding unapproved intimate gestures during filming, claiming he leaned in, kissed her forehead, and touched her without consent. However, clear video evidence contradicts her claims, showing her fully engaged in the scene, even initiating some of the very actions she now portrays as forced.
She even called him a sociopath at one point during the exchange. She tries to play this like a positive. Her attempts at humor and levity, her words, actions, and body language all evince her lack of consent.
It's clear that Blake Lively's handling of this controversy follows a well-worn pattern of manipulation rather than genuine concern for workplace ethics. Her insistence on framing herself as a victim while disregarding overwhelming evidence, to the contrary, exposes her as a master of deceit. The way she selectively edits and misrepresents facts is nothing more than a desperate attempt to maintain relevance in an industry that increasingly demands accountability. If you want to stay on top of this unfolding drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're covering every twist and turn, twice a day, every day.